Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, oh Hare Rama, oh Rama Rama. Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All Guru Shri Prabhupada. Welcome to devotees to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. This morning we are going to be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Verse 33. And the chapter is entitled The First Steps to God Realization. We're very happy to have His Holiness Candramauli Swami with us, who is right in America with us. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you and Shri Prabhupada Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Jai Ho, Anasuya, my obeisances to you and all of the wonderful devotees that you brought with you.
You brought with you, Maharaj. I'm just the background, just moving buttons. That's all I'm doing.
You in the back pushing them all forward.
Thank you, Maharaj, and it's all yours.
Jai Ho, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nadyo Sadyo Nadyo Tatani Ruhani Mahiruha Vishwatano Nipendra Anantavirya Swasitam Matarisva Katirvaya Karma Guna Pravaha. Translation: O King, the rivers are the veins of the gigantic body, the trees are the hairs on his body, and his omnipotent air is his breath. Passing ages are his movements, and his activities are the reactions of the three modes of material nature. Purport. The personality of Godhead is not a dead stone, nor is he inactive, as is poorly thought by some schools. He moves with the progress of time, and therefore he knows all about the past and future, along with his present activities. There is nothing unknown to him. Conditioned souls are driven by the reactions of the modes of material nature, which are the activities of the Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:12, the modes of nature are under his direction only, and as such, no natural functions are blind or automatic. The power behind the activities is the supervision of the Lord, and thus the Lord is never inactive as is wrongly conceived. The Vedas say that the Supreme Lord has nothing to do personally, as is always the case with superiors. but everything is done by his direction. As it is said, not a blade of grass moves without his sanction. In the Brahma Samhita 548, it is said that all the universes are the heads of them, the Brahmas, exist only for duration of his breathing period. The same is confirmed here. The air on which the universes and planets within the universe exist is nothing but the breath, a bit of the breath of the unchallengeable Virat Purush. So even by studying the rivers, trees, airs, and passing ages, one can conceive of the personality of Godhead without being misled by the formless conception of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, it is said that those who are much inclined to the formless conception of the supreme truth are more troubled than those who are intelligently conceive of the person form. Om Gyan Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta is Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pucharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pastyatya Desatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Evacha Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here you're hearing a description of the universal form of the Lord, which in one sense is formless, and that it doesn't directly connect one with his transcendental original form, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarna Karnam. Behind the formless, there is the form. Or you might say, along with the formless, there is form, because the word formless has no meaning unless there is form. So his form is actually his transcendental personality. But he manifests himself in his formless aspect also for those who cannot worship him in his transcendental form, or don't want to worship him in his transcendental form. They find it more natural or easier to perceive God within nature. Sometimes this is called pantheism, that God is nature, or God is within nature. And that is also true, but it doesn't mean that God is nature. It means that the nature or the energy of God is simply an expansion of one of his energies, which is the formless aspect of himself, which comes from his original form. As he says in the Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matat Sarva Prapartanten. Iti Bhatav Majante Buddha Bhava Samanditaha. That all of existence, both form and formless, are actually coming from him, the original transcendental source of both the form and the formless. The devotees, they worship the Lord in his personal form. They chant the holy name of the Lord, which is a form aspect of the Lord. The Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is not formless, it's form. Because it's non-different than Krishna in the sense that the manifestation of the transcendental sound is Sabda Brahman, or pure spiritual energy. and it manifests itself in the form of sound. Sound is one of the energies of the Lord, and it is not a formless aspect because within sound there is form. And that's been also shown too, just like radio waves. The whole scientific analysis of radio waves is to project form through ether and manifest itself in various types of electronic media. And you can see form through the formless media that transforms or transfers the form from one area to the other. But sometimes it appears to be formless, but it's not. But the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is transcendental sound in form. But then the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, or the transcendental name of the Lord, is also manifested in a formless aspect of himself, and that is called Omkara. Om, O-M-K-A-R-A, or Om, A-U-M. That is the formless aspect of the transcendental sound vibration of the Lord. So those who chant Omkara, they are worshiping the Lord in his formless manifestation of sound. And those who chant Hare Krishna are worshiping the Lord in his form aspect of sound, which is the topmost, and the way that relationships are actually played out, because in form you can't have relationships with something that is formless, because by nature we are also formally manifested. We also have form, both spiritual and material form. We know what our material form is, it's this body, but our spiritual form is our soul, which is in the same sense as God. It is non-different than God, and that has form, and so spirit also has form in the transcendental relationship with the Lord as the Jiva soul. So here, this description of the universal form in an analogous way, showing the various aspects of the universe in connection to the formless manifestation of the Lord's body, which is one sense imaginary, but why is it given so much time and energy and preference here in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is non-different than the transcendental personality of Godhead? Because people who are inclined to spirituality but cannot approach the absolute truth in the formless way, can see, or at least perceive, the Lord in his formless manifestation as the Virat Rup. Here in the analogous, if you go down the page, it says here, well, actually it's here in the translation. The veins, trees are the hairs on his body. The omnipotent air is his breath. The rivers are his veins. Of course, you go to other verses, it says the mountains are his bones, and the oceans are his abdomen. So all this is leading ultimately to give an understanding that you can see, or at least worship God through the manifestation of his energy, which in one sense is himself. But it's preliminary. It doesn't go beyond a certain level of understanding. At least it allows one to understand that whatever is in existence is, in one sense, different and non-different, and with the Supreme Lord himself. It's different because it's not him in his transcendental form, but it's non-different because it's one of his manifested energies known as material energy or material nature. It's called Bahiranga Shakti. And there is Antaranga Shakti, which is the pure formful spiritual energy. Then there's the Bahiranga Shakti, which is the material energy, which is also spiritual because it's coming from the pure spiritual personality, Krishna himself. Therefore, anything that comes from God has to be spiritual, although it may manifest and be described in a less direct way, and that is the formless aspect of the Lord. Now, Prabhupada goes on to say that there are a class of people, and a very large class of people, you might even say, in terms of comparison, more people are inclined to worship God or to understand God or try to understand God in his formless aspect. Because in the formless aspects, there's no real commitment to surrender. And this is the major point. To the form aspect, in order to develop relationships with Krishna in his personal, there is an element of surrender that has to be there. Not an element. I mean, the feature of that relationship is based on following the directions of the Supreme Lord as one's guide in worshiping the Lord. Whereas the formless, they don't follow so many rules and regulations or what we say guidelines. They see God within, or try to see God as a manifestation of his different energies, like that. There is a sense of awe, there's a sense of reverence that develops. And awe and reverence is actually the beginning of God worship, or the worship of the Supreme Lord. Because without that principle, then one cannot really progress beyond, because one has to understand that God is the all-powerful feature of existence, and he manifests himself in the terms of the creative aspect of material energy. And therefore, it is preliminary, as it says here. This chapter is described as the first step in God realizations. And it sets the stage for people who cannot or are unable to worship or even understand the nature of personality. Because the philosophy of those who worship in the formless is that when you take form, you limit, and formlessness is unlimited and form is limited. It's like the air is everywhere, so you might say it's unlimited in one sense, that it's all pervading. But you might say a person who breathes air is limited, they're in one place, that's all. But that's a material conception, and it doesn't apply to the absolute nature of God, because in the formless, or in the formless also exists, and the form is superior to the formless, because formlessness is an energy of the form. And therefore, in the form, there is no limitation. Everything exists within the form, just like we say, when we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the first stage of realizing Krishna through his name, in the process of chanting, is to realize that Krishna and his name is non-different. That is the first stage of realization through the process of chanting Hare Krishna. If one is practicing the process properly, with the proper mood, then one can understand, yes, the name is non-different than Krishna. One can feel the presence of Krishna through the chanting of his name. As that manifests more, then one can understand and experience God in his form as a, you might say, the manifestation of the next step in realization of the chanting. So from the name comes the form, and then the third step is qualities, and the last step is his pastimes or activities. So within the name, because it is non-different than the personality of Godhead, his forms are there, his qualities are there, his attributes, his paraphernalia, the Dham, everything, and ultimately ending and culminating with the highest aspects of realization of the name, that the name actually takes one into the association of Krishna to be paid to take part in Krishna's transcendental pastimes, even while one is in this material world. Of course, that's a very complete and high level of pure devotion. And we see from the examples of the Goswamis, such as Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami would go into his manifestation as his Siddha Dev, his spiritual body. He'd be chanting the holy name of the Lord, and all of a sudden, he'd leave that level of consciousness and enter into the pastimes as his personal identity as Rati Manjari. And then in that mood of Rati Manjari, he would be serving Srimati Radharani in her personal abode and doing all personal things to prepare her to meet with Lord Krishna in their transcendental pastimes. And then after some time, he would leave that realm and go back to Raghunath Das Goswami, the great sage, chanting on the banks of the holy river. And then as he would go again deeper into the holy name, he would leave that realm and go back into his realm of being with Radharani in the spiritual world. And so you can see this is the highest expression of one's bhakti. One enters into the pastimes of the Lord. But the point is that within the name, everything exists. Therefore, within the form, formlessness exists, and all of the manifestations of the quality of the form of the Lord also manifest, such as his attributes, pastimes, qualities of Dham, everything is there. So therefore, chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the recommended way to achieve perfect self-realization in this age and reach the highest form of transcendental realization. That is one's eternal relationship with Krishna in the spiritual world. And that's mentioned by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the first verse of Shikshastra Purpura, where he says, Chaito Darpanam Marjanam Baba Mahadevani Nirvapanam Shreya Kriva Vichandrika Vitanadam Vidya Vidhu Jivanam Anandam Budi Vardhanam Pratipratam Purnam Rita Swadhanam. That is the point there, that particular quality of the chanting of the Nam Pratipratam Purnam Rita Swadhanam, that every step as one makes progress in chanting, one becomes more and more connected to their personal form with Krishna in the spiritual world. So everything is there in the chanting of the holy name. And the Mayavadis and others, they also chant, but they chant Om. And the Om is the impersonal manifestation of God. It's one sense non-different than Hare Krishna, but it doesn't give realization of the transcendental form of the Lord, which is the nature of bhakti. And therefore, they remain what we say on the platform at best of gyan. They have knowledge of the unmanifested form of the Lord as the energy that pervades the material energy. But then again, that's also a temporary manifestation, as is explained by Lord Brahma. And he says, Aruna Krishchena Padam Padam Padantiyada Anadritya Usmanga Ahangrayaha. This is a verse from the 14th chapter of the 10th canto, where he says that, yes, there are persons who worship the Lord and they go high on the spiritual platform, but because they do not take up devotional service, Padantiyada, again, they fall down back to the material level in due course of time. And their efforts to achieve perfection are ultimately very difficult to perform. Therefore, in one sense, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is easy in the sense that what is required to chant? It requires an ear to hear the sound, a tongue to make the sound, and a mind to focus one's attention on that sound. Everyone has that. But of course, in Kali Yuga, it becomes even the easiest process becomes very difficult. But by the mercy of the spiritual master and Lord Chaitanya, one can realize the highest manifestation of the Supreme Lord in his personal form through the process of surrendering oneself in devotional service to the Lord. That means there must be guidance from Krishna's pure representative, the spiritual master. Otherwise, on one's own, they can try, just like the Mayavadis or the impersonalists. Prabhupada mentions here one verse. If you go down the page, you'll see that verse. That's part of this. It's 12.5. Yeah. In the Bhagavad, it said that those who are much inclined to the formless conception are more troubled than those who are intelligently conceive of the personal form. And although they're trying for a lesser level of understanding of the Lord, but to get to the lesser level, it's more trouble than getting to the higher level. so this is Klesha Dictatorus Tesham of Yakta Vyaktatesham. This is the verse from the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, which chapter is devotional service. So Krishna explains himself both in his personal and impersonal form. But for the devotees, the personal form is the most attractive and the more natural way to approach the absolute truth. Because we are person and God is also person. But here, for the sake of those who cannot approach or will not approach the absolute truth in his personal form, because they don't want to surrender to the Lord. That's the point. They don't want to give up their conceptions of their understanding of their activities in the material world, or they want to do it their own way. Pretty much. They think they can approach the absolute truth through their own process of 18, not this, not this, not this, not this. But it's very arduous. They can come to some level of understanding that God is all pervading, and everything in existence is a manifestation of the supreme truth. But they can't develop what we say loving relationships with the Lord. They get sat, and sometimes those who are very expert in the formless aspect, they can also get chit, which is super soul manifestation, but they cannot approach the absolute truth in Bhagavan, or the form manifestation of the Lord as the supreme source of all existence, Krishna, the personality of Godhead. But just to re-emphasize the importance of these particular verses here in this chapter, it's for beginners, for those who cannot take to the highest path. They can get a foothold in devotional service, and if they stay with this and hear from the scriptures and from a bona fide representative of the Lord, they can actually give up their faith, just like the 4 Kumaras. The 4 Kumaras were Brahmavadis. They were sons of Lord Brahma. And they had realized God in his formless aspect as Brahman. They were Brahman realized. But when they came in contact with the lotus feet of the Lord and smelled the beautiful tulsi leaves and sandalwood pulp that was emanating from the Lord's transcendental lotus feet, they actually gave up automatically their conception of Brahman realization and actually took to personal devotion. And that's mentioned in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we have examples of those who move from the formless to the form. But it's good to know for devotees who worship the Lord in this form, what is the formless aspect, so we can understand the difference between the two and help us to stay fixed in our process of devotional service. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Marge, for making it as simple as possible for us to really understand the essence of this chapter and the essence of the verse. Very, very nice class, Marge. Thank you for the points. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to request devotees, if you can please, wherever you're at, turn on your videos so that we can have each other's association and also with Maharaj. And if there are any questions, please do raise your hand and I will call in the order. Sri Devi is on it. Sri Devi, I think you got over your jet lag, huh?
Gurudev's mercy.
It's
That's
all
all.
yours, Mataji. Go right ahead with your question.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Gurudev. All glories to Prabhupada. All glories to your holiness. So as I was hearing your class, Guru Maharaj, about the formless aspect, which is worshipped by many, I was also remembering that Prabhupada said even the Mayavadis, they chant Hare Krishna, but they chant Hare Krishna with the intention to become one with Radha Krishna. So if they are chanting with the wrong intention rather than in a devotional mood, but because the holy name is supremely pure, will they get some benefit from that chanting?
Yeah, they get freedom from material suffering. It's called, what is it called? Bhukti karma, or that kind of result that is freedom from material suffering. They rise above the material energy and they enter into the consciousness of being spirit. But they see the holy name not as the Lord, but as a means to an end rather than the end in itself. So in one sense, the Mayavadis, there's difference between the impersonalists and the Mayavadis. Impersonalists worship the Supreme Lord as the Brahman effulgence. They're the Gyanis. But many Gyanis are also Mayavadis in the sense that they believe that ultimately all of the different forms are meant as a manifestation to reach the formless. And there, in one sense, they are aparadis, they're offenders. So they offend the Lord by thinking that the Lord is, they actually think that they are God themselves, and also that they can simply worship the deity, chant the names, perform various sacrifices, penances, austerities, and pujas, then they can come to the platform of being the Supreme Lord. And they call themselves Narayan, Om Namo. They address each other as Om Namo Narayan. Like that. Mayavadis are offenders. The impersonalists, who are not Mayavadis, who are worshipping the Brahman aspect, are not offenders. And therefore they can progress to the second and ultimately third stage if they follow the process properly.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the nice question, Sri Devi. Any questions from devotees, please do raise your hand or you can put it in the chat and I will be happy to read your question. Maharaj, as you were speaking about the formless being unlimited and the form versus which is the personal form of Krishna being limited, I was just thinking that for like I was just thinking like in a practical sense, Like when it comes to, a mother and child relationship or parent and child relationship, there is a form for the parent to look up to the parent, because there is a mom and a dad kind of a form, as opposed to a child thinking that everybody is parent and it's limitless. So I'm just thinking, what makes one think that, what makes one think that the personal form of Krishna is limited? I'm just trying to think more in a.
They compare material with spiritual. Their understanding is the material form, and therefore they superimpose the idea on the spiritual. That form is limited, therefore even God's form is also material because it's limited. But it's not. Krishna's form is transcendental, and it's the embodiment of all manifestations of the absolute truth within. And it manifests himself in different ways according to how one worships the Lord. So spiritual form is not limited, but material form is limited. So, yeah, just like people imitate Krishna's rasa dance, thinking that they are actually, performing a spiritual activity, but it's not. Because Krishna's rasa dance is in a completely different consciousness and a different realization level. It's not like people who are trying to enjoy boy and girl in this world and performing activities to experience something. It's completely opposite. But it looks the same. Therefore, unless they take shelter of the pure representative of the Lord, the spiritual master, they cannot understand the Lord's activities. They compare the Lord with themselves or with something material. And the most popular misconception is that when Krishna comes to the material world, he takes on a material form. Just like you might see that his form looks material and may even seem to act in that way. Just like when Lord Nityananda was hit on the head with a pot by Mud-Eye, his head started to bleed. You might say, well, that's material. But that's your vision, that's all. The Lord doesn't try to perform miracles in the material world to convince people that he is the Supreme Lord. He comes to purify the atmosphere and to gather devotees to worship him and help them move forward on the process of devotional service. So he may manifest something that looks material, but it's not. It's just not. It's transcendental. Just like we say, well, they say, well, Krishna danced with so many gopis, I can do that. Then all right, you want to dance with gopis, then go ahead and lift Govardhan Hill. If you actually think you're as good as the Supreme, you can do the same thing. Then lift the Govardhan Hill. Let's see if you can do that. They can't. Or those who worship Shiva, they say, well, Shiva, he smokes ganja. All right, so we can smoke ganja because he's our worshipful deity and we're following him. All right, then drink an ocean of poison, as he did during the manifestation of the, what is that, Leela? In the 15th chapter. It's the king of all Leelas in the Bhagavatam, aside from Krishna's personal Leelas.
Samudra Manthan Leela.
What was it?
Samudra Manthan Leela.
No, it has a different name.
Churning of the ocean.
Is that the churning of the ocean, Maharaj, that pastime?
Yeah.
With Mohini Murthy coming at the end?
Yeah.
Amrit Manthan.
Yeah, it's the, well, I guess you could say the turning of the ocean. It has another name though. So
It's called either Amrit Manthan or Samudra Manthan Leela.
okay. So I can accept that because I don't really know the other name. So the point is that you can't imitate grace personalities and think that it's all right to do whatever they do. Tejo Sam Rajo Sire, the scriptures say, they can do these things because they're transcendental to material energy. But then again, they may act ordinary also for the sake of teaching others how to perform, spiritual activities. The imitation is cheap, and imitation doesn't have any basis in reality. This is what it is, imitation. So yeah, if you want to, be like God, then do the same thing he does. Let's see if you can do it. They can't do it, but yet they still claim that they're the supreme. That's the Mayavadis.
Maharaj, thank you, Maharaj, for that clarification. Thank you so much. Maharaj, so if my understanding is correct, is the chapter is entitled First Steps, which you mentioned it's the preliminary steps to Krishna consciousness. So here Srila Prabhupada is explaining the different forms that one can appreciate the Lord, hoping that they will get to the stage of the personal form of God. Is that what it is, Maharaj?
Yeah, it's a step-by-step process to come out of the materialistic concept and come into the first step is to be able to see God in nature. It's just very basic preliminary. As for people who are materially inclined but still have some interest in the spiritual aspect of existence. Sometimes we call it pantheism. That's one way of seeing it. But pantheism says that God is nature. Where we say to see God in nature is an element of pantheism, but it's not actual the same understanding as pantheism. They say God is nature. We say God can be seen in nature because that nature is also an energy of him. He manifests himself in his different energies, and nature is one of them. And to give a little form to that understanding, the analogy of his transcendental body, the rivers, bones, veins, like that. These are the connecting forces that make it more personal. Yeah, but it's a preliminary stage. It's not for devotees. Devotees are beyond that. They have gotten beyond that. Hopefully.
Maharaj, when you were mentioning these 2 points, I really had to, play with the vocab in my mind, because God as nature is formless, but seeing God in nature with this energy is a personal aspect of the Lord's energy.
Right. Yeah. Just like people say, well, why do you worship a stone as God? It's like we worship Shalagram. Why do you worship stone as God? We don't worship stone as God. We worship God who comes in the form of stone. It's the opposite.
Thank you, Marge. Very deep. Very deep. Thank you. Any questions from devotees, please do raise your hand. This is yes, Parikshit, go ahead.
Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to your Prabhupada. So as the questions started, Sridevi mentioned some things, Surya mentioned some things. So I'm trying to connect the dots, and you tell me if I'm reasoning correctly. This is the reason now. I'm speaking out now. I heard the Mayavadis chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and then you also said that they are offensive. Mhm. And so then I started thinking, well, they must know the meaning of the Hare Krishna mantra, because the meaning says that please engage me in his service. So they're supposed to be servants according to the mantra that they chant, if they chant the Hare Krishna mantra. But at the same time, they want to come up to the master level of being Narayan. And that's where the offense is. Is that
They
where
see the Hare Krishna mantra as material. It's a means to the spiritual. That's all.
okay.
It's a way to get to the spiritual. That's all. It's like if you want to go to the top of the roof, you need a ladder. So the
I get
ladder,
it. Mm.
so for them, they worship the deity of the Lord. They also have deities. They also, they chant mantras, not only the Hare Krishna mantras, but other mantras, as a means to purify themselves to get to the point of realization. It's more like, just like we follow rules and regulations. Rules and regulations are material, but they're necessary in order to get towards the spiritual. If we don't follow rules and regulations, then we can't really go beyond a certain point of understanding, because these rules and regulations allow us to stay on the path and move in the right direction. But ultimately, they're not the goal. Sometimes we see that in Krishna consciousness. Devotees get so attached to rules and regulations, but they don't know what the purpose of the rules and regulations are. It's to go to the point of realization of the absolute truth.
Mm.
So we accept the external as the goal, and that's the same way they do. Well, they also say that the goal is to understand you're actually God.
Then when they get to the goal, whatever the imagine their goal is, then they would stop chanting the Hare Krishna mantra then, because then it becomes meaningless.
And then they go into some kind of meditation on the formless aspect. That's like that verse that was mentioned, 12.5, is they can get there, but it's very troublesome. Very troublesome. If you go to that verse, honestly, at 12.5.
In Bhagavad Gita, right, Maharaj?
Klesha dictataris tesham avyakta vantesham.
Avyaktahi Katira.
Prabhupada
You
just
can share it now, Maharaj.
indicates it. But it's mentioned in the chapter as devotional service. Klesha dictataris tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukam deva vabir avyakyateni. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Lord, advancement is very troublesome. This is the point. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So, yeah, so if you read this particular purport, you'll understand everything that we've been discussing here.
Mm.
It's a very, you want to read the purport or do you want to go on?
I can read the purport, Maharaj.
Okay.
The group of transcendentalists who follow the path of the inconceivable, unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord are called Jnana Yogis, and persons who are in full Krishna consciousness, engaged in devotional service to the Lord, are called Bhakti Yogis. Now, here the difference between Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is definitely expressed. The process of Jnana Yoga, although ultimately bringing one to the same goal, is very troublesome, whereas the path of Bhakti Yoga The process of being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is easier and is natural for the embodied soul. The individual soul is embodied since time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. Therefore, the bhakti yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind, which can thus be applied. Of course, worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form within the temple is not idol worship. There is evidence in the Vedic literature that worship may be saguna or nirguna of the Supreme possessing or not possessing attributes. Worship of the deity in the temple is saguna worship, for the Lord is represented by material qualities. But the form of the Lord, though represented by material qualities such as stone, wood, or oil paint, is not actually material. That is the absolute nature of the Supreme Lord.
Yeah, we can stop there, and it's in the just further explanation of the same points. It's clear. Yeah, so they worship the deity, thinking it's, to go beyond ultimately, but devotees worship the deity, knowing the deity is no different than the Lord. Although he may appear in different, he appears in 8 different manifestations: stone, wood, paint, brass, what else there's. And another manifestation as the Lord appears within the mind also. That's one of the forms of worshiping the Lord, when he appears in the mind. So this gives you a little understanding of the difference between Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. And the goal of Jnana Yoga is Brahman realization. The goal of Bhakti Yoga is realizing Krishna as the ultimate principle of devotion and developing a loving relationship, which is the perfection of life, because that understanding can only satisfy the soul. Soul cannot be understood worshiping the Lord in his manifestations as Brahman or even Paramatma, because we are also personal. Therefore, we have a personal relationship with the personality of Godhead, and that is called bhakti, or love and devotion.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
This is a very powerful verse too, 12:5. Very,
Yeah.
very powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marge. Marge, that's a question here by Rishabhadas. Hare Krishna, dear Gurudev and Vaishnavas, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Shri Prabhupada and Gurudev. When performing Harinam Sankirtan in the street, it is preferable and wanted that a devotee who was the taste and full faith in the holy name to lead kirtan in full Vaishnava dress with tilak, then any Bhakta Joe who can sing nicely or who want to engage him so he feels valued. Would like to hear your comment on this. Thank you. So let me read that again, Maharaj. Yeah, when performing Harinam Sankirtan in the street, it is preferable and wanted that a devotee who has the taste and full faith in the holy name to lead the kirtan in full Vaishnava dress with tilak, then any Bhakta Joe who can sing nicely or who we want to engage him so he feels valued. And he's asking for your comment on that. I'm hoping I'm understanding his point here.
It seems to me that if you put it in a question form, it makes more sense. Is it preferable? Read it again.
Yeah.
It's hitting me. Is it preferable that a person who is dressed up with the tilak and everything lead the kirtan rather than somebody in the back to do whatever they're wearing to do it?
He may be.
That's the question. Okay.
Yeah,
You just changed it.
Singing nicely is not is never in the scriptures as saying the quality of advancement. It doesn't say because you sing nice you're advanced. It's those who have devotion. Devotion is the quality of understanding the quality of the person's spiritual position. So, using the example of Sankirtan, we're not street merchants, or what they call it. Where do they go? Those guys that sing in the street. Street singers, or I don't know, what do they call them? We're not just
Buskers, Maharaj.
huh? What's the word?
The buskers.
Yeah, something like
They
that.
busk, yeah. Sorry, but
We're not out there just to, make a show. We're out there to inspire people to hear the glories of the Lord in the form of chanting. And we're representing the Lord by our dress. Because anybody can get out there in ordinary clothes and sing. It doesn't mean they're representing the Lord. They may also sing the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but they're not devotees because they're doing it for some I don't know, entertainment, you might say, or some personal gratification. So yeah, therefore the quality is those who are following. That's the point. Those who are following are qualified to take the part of inspiring others. And those who are not following, they just have to learn how to follow. That's all.
Marge, there's a follow-up question or point statement by Vrishabhadas Prabhu. Devotees are very hesitant to be in Vaishnava clothes while in Harinam. Yeah, I have to agree with him on that. I've seen that too, sadly.
Yeah, well, what is that hesitation? That they don't really understand what they're doing. We're representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, our dress is the indication of who we are. The police, if you want to find a policeman, he's dressed in a certain way. If he's a plain clothes policeman, he has another mission out there. So yeah. So we're proud to become devotees, and our dress indicates that. There was that story where Prabhupada talks about there was one factory with many workers in the factory. They were all Hindus. And they would come to work every day with Gopi Chandan Tilak. And that was their, part of their dress was the tilak. So then the factory was sold to an Islamic person. And once he took over, he said, "You do not come to work anymore with this tilak. If you do, you will lose your job." So everybody stopped except one person. And then that Islamic man approached that person. He said, "Oh, I told you." I said, "You can't come, therefore." And then the man said, "This is my religion. I'm proud of it. This is the way I dress." And by saying that, the Islamic person understood, and he said, "Yes, okay. Well, you can come and the rest cannot come." Prabhupada tells that story. So the indication is, why should we be ashamed of who we are? What are we trying to prove by presenting something? I mean, sometimes in certain cases, it may be also advantageous to our preaching to go out with what we say ordinary clothes in certain venues for preaching. That's mentioned in the 7th canto also. When in the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, when Haranyakashipu was saying, "Well, there must be Vaishnavas in the skies coming into the school and polluting Prahlad. So Prabhupada says, yes, sometimes the Vaishnavas have to come in disguise. So we may sometimes change our dress in certain situations. But for Harinam Sankirtan, I don't see why we would do that. There's no reason. We want to be known as Hare Krishnas. That's who we are. And not just some street band.
Thank you, Maharaj. I'm going to go to Sakshi and then I'll come back to Vishabha Prabhu. Sakshi, you can ask a question, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, my question is related to chanting. So when I try to chant, I try to give focus on the holy name, as in I try to put attention on the holy name. But while doing that, I lack the devotional aspect. So how can I develop that prayerful mood, devotional aspect?
If you put your concentration on the holy name, your devotional aspect will automatically start to arise within your mind and heart. Because the holy name is Krishna himself. And if you're connecting with Krishna through the sound vibration, that devotional aspect will automatically arise. So Prabhupada says, just try to hear.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, that's another question, follow-up question by Vishabha Prabhu. He says, if I understood correctly, you mentioned, Gurudev, that devotees should learn how to follow. That sounds very important. There is no culture of following the leaders in the West.
That's not true. We're following Anasuya right now. What do you mean there's no culture?
No, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Where did you get that idea from? There is maybe a lack of 100%, but it's, well, I know what he's trying to say, and there's some element of value in what he's saying, that in Western civilization, in Western societies, the individual spirit is more stronger than when it comes to the devotees who are coming from the actual culture in India. In India, there is a type of mood to follow superiors, to worship superiors. The undercurrent in the West is that I want to be the superior, or I don't trust superiors, or I can do the same thing my way in a better way. So that's there, but it's not 100%. It's, it's there to some degree. It's also there in India also, because the Western influence is also coming. What is the Western interest? Is individualism, as opposed to working in a cooperative way to follow those who are in a position of leadership. So there's an element of truth in what he's saying, but it's not like, well, it's not there. It is there, but not as much as we find it in the Indian culture, or we say Vaishnava culture. It's there.
I think, Mars, the point that you also mentioned is that, and like you said, there is some truth in what Vishabha Prabhu said, because I see that too. And I think, like you mentioned, it depends on how strong our inclination is to be the controller and not to be the follower.
That's the way we're brought up in the West. more so. Or we're brought up to follow authority, but we've seen that authority somehow falls short of being qualified to be authority. Therefore, we reject authority in the name of that they're not qualified. Therefore, I should establish my own authority. But you have to find that authority who is qualified to lead. It's there in the West also. It's there everywhere in the world. It's just a matter of proportion, that's all.
Hope that helped, Rishab. Yes, he said yes. Thank you. Any other questions from devotees that you would like to ask? Marge, when you were speaking about rules and regulations, I was remembering of the lecture that we heard yesterday on Bhagavatam class by Shiv Prabhupada, where Shiv Prabhupada was mentioning in his lecture that that really, made me think how the rules and regulations we have, the do's and don'ts, the etiquette, everything, are our servants to progress in Krishna consciousness. And I really liked how Shri Prabhupada used the word servants.
So what's the question?
No, Mark, no, not a question, but more, making a comment to what you mentioned about the, how these rules and regulations are important in our lives. And then when you're mentioning that, I was thinking about Shri Prabhupada, how he used that, saying that these can act as our servants, these rules and regulations. And I really liked how Shri Prabhupada used the word servants, that these rules and regulations, the etiquette, the do's and don'ts, are our servants to make us progress in Krishna consciousness. So I was just sharing that.
Yeah. There's a difference between something that assists and something that is the goal. The rules and regulations are not the goal. They assist to get us to the goal. So therefore, in that sense, yeah, they're servants.
Yeah, the choice of word by Prabhupada was the lecture was so perfect. I didn't even think of that servant, like the assistants. That was like, wow, it was pretty powerful for me. Any other, sorry, March.
Christ said, you have a sepulcher, but it's filled with worms. He was criticizing the Pharisees in the temple, that externally, they look very good, but internally, they're, something else. It's contaminated. So, yeah, devotion is internal and manifests itself external. But there's those who practice the external without really going deep and into the internal and thinking the external. We got the example of Krishna's pastimes when one one demon dressed up as a cowherd boy. And he was playing with Krishna and Balaram also. They were having a match between Krishna's team and Balaram's team. So the demon joined Krishna's team. And so all of the other boys couldn't see that this other cowherd boy was a demon. He dressed up as one of the cowherd boys who didn't come to play that day. But Krishna saw it. Balaram didn't see it either at first. Later on, he saw it. So Krishna's team lost, and the idea was the losers would have to take the winners on their back. So this cowherd boy put Balaram on his back. And then he started going with Balaram. And then Balaram started to realize he's not a cowherd boy, he's a demon. And then he turned into his demoniac form. And that was Palambasura. Yeah. But, nobody was able to see that this cowherd boy was actually a demon because he was expert at the external. So you have to be careful in Krishna conscious movement who is actually a devotee. Doesn't mean because a person follows the rules and regulations they're a devotee. Devotee means one who, the actual qualification of a devotee, we were listening to Radhanath Swami speak last night here in Dallas. He was saying the qualification of a devotee is that they appreciate other devotees. They appreciate the service, they appreciate the association of other devotees. That's the qualification of a devotee. That's one of the qualifications, main one. Just because I have tilak and I dress nicely and I look nicely doesn't mean I'm actually a devotee at heart. It may indicate something, but it's understood by consciousness, and consciousness is reflected in activities. So beware of, Putana. Putana looked like, a mother, and she came. Everyone thought, oh, what a beautiful lady. And she's come to serve Krishna nicely. They couldn't see it, but Krishna understood who she was.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes, Devi, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to share, Guru Maharaj, these exact same words were told to me by my mentor, Mother Danakeli, when I moved to New Orleans and I saw so many things that were very disturbing, and I wrote to her. She said, do not be naive. Do not think that everyone dressed with tilak and kantimala and dhoti is a devotee. Learn to discriminate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's understood by their activities and by their words. More by their activities, but also by the words to some degree.
And I think with that, we need the help, as you said, Devi, like we all need mentors, to really discriminate, whether we've been practicing, I feel, for a short time or for like eons, we all need mentors to help us in our journey.
Yeah.
Mark, there's a question here from Vishabhadas. He said, short question if possible. For the beginners, is it important for them to stop associating with opposite sex in a friendly matter? Is that a blockage in their advancement as a subtle form of illicit sex? Just wondering.
It is. It's mentioned in the Bhagavatam. It is. I guess he's a brahmachari, so I guess he's asking from his position of brahmachari, to develop friendly and what we say casual relationships is a subtle form of sex desire. It's mentioned in the, where is it? You want to turn to that verse, 6th canto, 1st chapter, verse 13 and 14. There's two verses together, I think.
6th canto, which chapter, March?
First chapter.
1st chapter.
13 and 14. This is important.
13 to 14. I got it. I'm going to share it now. There we go. Is that it, Marge?
Yeah.
6, 13, 14?
Yeah, tapasya brahmacharjena samena chidemi cha tagyena satya sauchabhyam yamena niyamena vam deha vag buhujam dhyarad vajagya Vita Shipyaga Mahad Api Venu Gulmam Ivan Alaha. Okay. So Yeah, I mean, the translation's good, but go down to the purport. It says here, the brahmachari life of celibacy has 8 aspects. One should not think of women, speak about sex life, dally with women, look lustfully at women, talk intimately with women, or decide to engage in sexual intercourse. Nor should one engage for sex life or engage in sex life. One should not even think of women or look at them, to say nothing of talking with them. This is first class brahmachari. Because when you break some of the more subtle aspects, like dallying with and talking with, one thing leads to another. And pretty soon you're making plans to engage in activities. So this is brahmachari life, which includes sannyas also. That doesn't apply for grihastas, because grihastas associate with their wives, but not in the wrong way, though. In the way for carrying out the affairs of grihasta ashram and for practicing Krishna consciousness. Okay, is that good?
Rishabha Prabhu.
Job, is that all right? Read this verse over and over again, and you'll get the idea. I mean, it sounds very strict and almost impossible, but if you practice, you'll get a higher taste.
Thank you, Maharaj. Any other questions from devotees? Please do let me know. You can either raise your hand, you can put it in the chat. I'm going down the list to make sure that I don't miss anyone. And I did not miss anyone. Okay. If there are no questions, Maharaj, would you like to end with a round of chanting?
Yes, and I would like to ask a question to you.
Yes, Maharaj.
How much time do you have before you have to leave?
Maharaj, I can be on, but I just can't be chanting because I'm getting emails from work, but I can still be on until, However, I just got to switch my screen, but this screen will be up.
All right, because I was thinking of chanting a little bit longer today, so.
That's fine, Marge. Yeah, and then I'll just go back and forth, if that's okay, Marge, please.
Yeah, and devotees can stay on as much as they have time for.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Jai Shri
And
Krishna.
those that can stay on, please do stay on for the japa. Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur, Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, 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 Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, 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 Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Hare Rama, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Krishna Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Krishna Hare. Krishna Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Rama, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.